Cheap bike, pro rider versus superbike, amateur rider. This is a video from GCN that popped up on my feed the other day. I think it's a few months old now, but it's actually a really good example of a cheap bike versus a super expensive bike. So I thought we'd get them both up and have a look at the differences. Just before we get into it, Hambini mentioned Bikotic in his Colnago video the other day, and these are the two bikes that he was looking at in that video, the V3RS and the V4RS from Colnago. And as Hambini pointed out, there's not a huge amount of difference to be seen when we overlay them in the Bikotic viewer. What is slightly annoying though is that Colnago have changed the way that they list the sizing. So this is the V3RS and this is the V4RS. And as you can see, the numbering has sort of changed a wee bit, which is a bit confusing because the V3RS, they photographed a 50S and I would probably go for a 52S. And then the V4RS, they photographed the 485, but I'd probably go for a 510. The great thing about Specialized, Giant and Canyon is that they all shoot a medium or a 56 in their photos and they're very consistent about that, which works really well in the Bikotic viewer because you can compare the bikes like for like. Not so much with the Italian manufacturers, they do like to mix things up a bit, leave a few things out on their geometry charts and have sort of different ways of describing their sizing. But there we go. Okay, so let's get into it. This is the Eurobike XC550 and this is the super cheap bike in the GCN video, coming in at $299.99. And to get hold of this bike, you would go to Amazon. It also comes with these rather fetching snazzy mag wheels as well. Whew. And then we have the Pinarello Dogma F. This is the super expensive bike in the GCN video, and this is basically Ineos's Tour de France race bike, and I think it's a bit more expensive than that now, but when I collected the data for this a few months ago, it was £12,200 Dura Ace Di2. Now Pinarello have a pretty cool feature on their site called MyWay. If you haven't used it already, you can go in there and you can actually custom paint your own 3D version of the Pinarello, and I think that's pretty cool, isn't it? You can zoom in, rotate around the bike, and choose all the different colors for the paintwork and the decals. Now the dream for Bikotic one day is that you can actually compare bikes in 3D, pretty much like this actually. Imagine being able to do that and then fade between the two bikes. That's the dream. Whether or not this could ever be a reality, I don't know, because I'm not sure manufacturers are ever going to hand over 3D models of their bikes, and boy, it takes a long time to model them. So that's the Pinarello Dogma F. Now obviously in the video they use different wheels on this bike, but we'll get to that in a bit. So the first thing in my list of things to look at between these two bikes is obviously the price. That's the big one. And when I collected the prices for these, the Pinarello was £11,900 more expensive than the Eurobike. Now in the UK, a premium subscription to Netflix is $15.99 a month, so that works out at 62 years of Netflix. Oof. I'm not sure that the Dogma F can offer quite the same longevity, so that's worth thinking about. Next up, weight. And bless Eurobike, they have listed the weight of this bike, and according to them, it's 15.9 kilograms. And then the Dogma F. Now, I got this weight from Cycling Weekly, so I'm not 100% sure if that's right, but 6.8 kilograms for this bike, which means that the Eurobike is somewhat heavier, 9 kilograms heavier. To be fair, like I said, the wheels were different in the video, so they would have made it a bit heavier, but that is 9 1-litre water bottles that you've got to fit onto this Dogma somewhere, which was kind of tricky. The other thing to note is the Eurobike does appear to have a kickstand on it, so you'd probably take that off. That's probably a couple of kilos right there. Now, the only way that I can see that you could upgrade this Eurobike enough to get the weight down would be to actually chuck half of it in the bin. But actually, I think that looks pretty cool. The saddle to bar drop is quite pro there, so why not? So next up, the geometry. If we fade back and forth between the two bikes, you can see that they're quite different. It's actually not completely fair because they are listed as different sizes as far as I can tell. But what we can say is that the Eurobike has extremely long chainstays, pretty much into gravel bike territory. I also like the solid carriage bolt axle there. That's pretty cool. And the other thing of note is that the bottom bracket is incredibly high, 53.2. I've never seen a bottom bracket that high on a road bike before. And in fact, if you watched one of my videos a while back, you'll have seen that I did an average of 240 road bikes and came up with this image here, which is literally an average road bike. And if we can compare between the two, you'll see that the Eurobike is actually very peculiar. And in fact, if you have the know-how how to make this bike, distribute it and sell it at this price point, I would just question why you didn't just copy a slightly more traditional shape, and then I think it would be a bit more of a viable purchase. I think that's just my opinion. Next up, aerodynamics, and this applies to all bikes really, but wherever you have a round shaped tube, this is about the least aerodynamic shape that you can have, because as the air passes round it, it separates really early and then creates a lot of turbulence behind it. And really what you want is a much more aerodynamic shape, be that like this or a more camtail type shape, and the air stays much closer to the shape for much longer and you get a much smaller turbulent area at the back. Quite clearly we can see that the Pinarello has a lot more aerodynamic shaping to it than the Eurobike. So what about comfort and stiffness of the frame? Well, Eurobike actually lists this as a steel frame. Now, I'm no expert in these things, but is that steel? Can you do that with steel? Or is that actually aluminium? I don't know. Put a comment down below. The forks definitely look steel, but the Pinarello is obviously carbon, and I think we can safely say is going to be stiffer, especially around this area here, and then the bottom bracket, which has got this massive load of carbon in here. So I think we can probably say that the Eurobike is going to be pretty flexy. Now how that equates in terms of comfort, well, I've got no idea. So what about gearing? One of the biggest complaints that the pro rider, Rory Townsend, had was that unless he was going uphill, he would very quickly spin out. Now even though the Eurobike comes with a triple crankset, so it's effectively got 21 gears with a 7-speed cassette on the back, if we actually have a look down here at the gear ratio calculator, we can see that in top gear, so the hardest gear, he'd be in the 42 at the front and the 14 at the back, which, pedaling at 90 RPM with a set of 28mm tyres on, he's only going to be going 34.5 kilometers an hour. Now if we fade through to the Pinarello with its 52 front chainring and its 11-tooth rear sprocket, we're looking at a much higher speed of 54.1 kilometers an hour at 90 RPM. So you can see exactly there as I fade back and forth how you would spin out very quickly on the Eurobike. The Pinarello comes with the Dura Di2, the new version, 12-speed, and with a bit of Googling I came up with a price for the group set of £3,500. Put that into context, the Dura Di2 rear derailleur, £574.99. The Eurobike comes with the TZ50 from Shimano, 7-speed, and that's retailing for £12.99. So yeah, bit of a difference. Likewise with the cassette, the Dura one, £239.99. And the 7-speed cassette for the Eurobike coming in around £16. Whew. If an alien beamed in from outer space and looked at these, they would think they looked exactly the same until they had to pay for them. The other thing of note on this Eurobike XC550 is that the gear shifters are on the handlebars like this, these interesting looking contraptions here, whereas obviously on the Dogma they're combined into the brake levers. So the brakes on the Dogma are the Dura hydraulic disc brakes, and just for the rear brake, I couldn't find the front brake, it's 135 quid, whereas on the Eurobike we have cable operated disc brakes from Bolids. Never heard of Bolids before, and you can get both of those on AliExpress for £8.54. And as I mentioned, the wheels in the GCN video, they used a full disc on the back of the Pinarello and the Vision Metron 81 on the front. Now the disc, I couldn't find an exact version. This looks like the latest version, and that's retailing for around 3,650 quid. Oof. And for the front wheel, I couldn't find a separate front wheel, but for the set, it's 1,850. So front wheel, if you can get it separately, I guess is about 850. And as for the Eurobike, well, I looked up Cannondale wheels, couldn't find any information, and interestingly on the Amazon advert they're listed as aluminium double wall rim, however they come with a carbon #1 sticker on them. So I'll just leave that there. While I was looking up the Vision Metron wheels, I came across this beast on their website. This is Stefan Bissiger's SuperSlice from Cannondale. And weirdly, I can't find the SuperSlice on Cannondale's site. Comment down below if you know why that is, or whether in fact they sell this, because I can't find it. Also this week I added this bike here, which is Ellen Van Dyke's Speed Concept from Trek. Super bling chrome bike. Looks like a spaceship. Amazing. And interestingly, if you compare the two like this, you'll see that Ellen Van Dyke probably is taller than Stefan Bissiger, because her bike appears to be bigger. It's actually quite interesting how similar this part of the bike is here. If we just fade back and forth, very similar shape there. That is so bling. I'd love a chrome bike. So last but not least, probably one of the most important things on your bike and the cheapest thing that you can get to add some performance is the tyres. And on the Pinarello, we have the Pirelli P0 Race. Not entirely sure what they used in the GCN video, but it will have been a top-end tyre, I'm sure. 61 quid, 205 grams. Whereas on the Eurobike, all I could see was compass. And obviously I looked that up, compass tyres, and I found a few bits and bobs, but no real information. So I think we have to assume that these are super slow rolling, super heavy, super cheap tyres. What do you reckon? $4.99? Who knows? If you know anything about those, put a comment down below. So my conclusion to all of this, the pro rider Rory Townsend did a pretty phenomenal job. He completed the 10-kilometer course in 14 minutes 24. His KOM of the course is 12:37. And then Ollie on his 15 grand-ish Dogma F could only put 18 seconds into him with a 14:06. And I think that says a lot. When you think how much this Eurobike cost, the fact that all the bar tape unraveled, the head unit was embarrassed to even be involved in the video, and by the end, it sounded like a rusty gate. It was squeaking like mad. I'm not sure how Rory Townsend didn't manage to snap it in half, but what it really shows is that the rider is what makes the biggest difference. And that number 2, performance and price go out of sync very rapidly. Yes, if you're sat on the sofa, you get a massive performance gain if you start walking, and it's not going to cost you much money. Likewise, if you start jogging, running, sprinting, for not a huge amount of money, you're going to see a massive performance gain. And as we come down, start losing performance gains and the price starts to increase, that's when about the Eurobike comes in. And then we start losing the easy wins. And this is where the price starts to increase exponentially and you start to get much smaller performance gains for a massive increase in price. Until we get all the way up here to the Dogma F, which is going to cost you a huge amount of money, but actually the performance gains over buying a bike further down here are going to be pretty small. But hey, if you like the Dogma and you've got the money to buy it, why not? But if you're short of cash, then, well, possibly the Eurobike. But I think probably my advice would be to try and scrape a bit more money together, because if you can get into this area here, you are going to get a bike much closer in performance to the more expensive gear that you can buy. And that's about it for this video, but I'll leave you with this, a mysterious parcel that turned up at Bikotic HQ yesterday. Well, it's not that mysterious, it's obviously a bike. And the bike in this box, I'm going to pit it against my Scott Addict RC 30 in a future video. One of them will have to go. Clearly, I don't have enough space to keep them both. Comment down below if you have any ideas what's in this box. And if you're looking for a new bike, or you just like looking at bikes, you'd be crazy not to go to bikotic.com, where you can compare hundreds of bikes all lined up and see the differences visually. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Until next time.